I never thought a slice of cake could cut deeper than a knife. But on the night of my nephew's birthday, it did. There I was standing in my sister's living room, surrounded by balloons, fairy lights, and the shrill laughter of children running around. Everyone looked so cheerful, so at ease, except me. My palms were damp, my heart restless. I had spent weeks thinking about this day. I wanted to make it special for my nephew. He's only 8, sweet, innocent, always greeting me with a shy smile whenever I visit. I thought maybe, just maybe, this time, things would be different. Maybe my sister would see me as part of the family again. That's why I bought him the most expensive gift. I saved up for months. It wasn't easy, but I told myself this gift would show them that I care, that I still belong. It wasn't just a toy. It was the one thing he had been dreaming of, talking about endlessly. The limited edition gaming console every kid his age was raving about. When I handed it to him, his eyes lit up like fireworks. He squealed in joy, and for a moment, just a fleeting moment, I felt proud. His arms wrapped around me tightly, and I thought maybe my sister will notice. Maybe she'll finally appreciate me. But instead, my sister walked up carrying a plate, a slice of cake. She held it out to me with a stiff smile. And then, with a voice dripping with coldness, she said the words that would burn into me for weeks to come. "Here, have some cake. And after this, you can leave." I froze. My chest tightened, my throat dried. I looked around, wondering if anyone else had heard it. And they had. My cousins shifted uncomfortably. My aunt glanced at me with pity, quickly looking away. Even my nephew had overstayed her welcome. That night, as I walked back home, carrying nothing but my own wounded pride, one thought kept echoing inside me: she humiliated me in front of everyone. And just like that, a spark ignited inside me. Small, faint, but undeniable. I didn't know it then, but that humiliation would become the beginning of something far greater. A fire that would grow, slowly, steadily, until it consumed everything she had built. Because if she wanted me gone, invisible, forgotten, I was going to make sure the entire family saw her true face instead. I never thought a slice of cake could cut deeper than a knife. But on the night of my nephew's birthday, it did. There I was standing in my sister's living room, surrounded by balloons, fairy lights, and the shrill laughter of children running around. Everyone looked so cheerful, so at ease, except me. My palms were damp, my heart restless, as if my very presence was unwanted. I had spent weeks thinking about this day. I wanted to make it special for my nephew. He's only 8, sweet, innocent, always greeting me with a shy smile whenever I visit. He never judged me the way his mother did. He just wanted me there. And for him, I wanted to try again. That's why I bought him the most expensive gift. I saved up for months. It wasn't easy working long hours, cutting down on little joys, skipping lunches sometimes. But when I saw his eyes light up as he unwrapped that box, it was worth it. His scream of excitement filled the entire room. "Mom, look, Auntie got it for me." She got it. His arms wrapped around me, tight, warm, genuine. For a fleeting second, my heart melted when my nephew hugged me. It was pure, real, a child's love untouched by jealousy or judgment. But when I lifted my eyes, I saw her, my sister. Her arms were crossed, her face stiff. The smile she wore wasn't real. It was one of those thin, forced smiles that didn't touch the eyes. I knew it well. I had seen it on her face all my life. She hated that moment. She hated that her son was holding onto me, thanking me, looking at me with admiration. Because in her world, she needed to be the only one shining, and then she walked over carrying a plate, a slice of cake. She handed it to me as if she was granting me a favor. Her voice was calm, but sharp enough to slice me open. Here, have some cake. And after this, you can leave. I heard whispers. I felt the eyes. My cheeks burned as if the room itself had turned against me. I looked around. My aunt shifted in her seat, pretending to adjust her sari. My cousin avoided my eyes, staring at his phone. Even the children quieted down for a second. I forced a smile. I took the plate, and I sat down quietly in the corner, chewing that cake slowly as if I could swallow the shame with every bite. But inside, I was screaming. Do you know what it feels like to stand in a room full of family and still feel like a stranger? To bring joy into a house and be treated as if your presence is a burden? It wasn't the first time. It had been this way for years. My sister always found ways to make me small. Growing up, she was the golden child, the one with the pretty face, the sharp tongue, the confidence that made our relatives adore her. And me, I was the quiet one, the one who stayed in the background, who never spoke unless spoken to. At every family gathering, it was always, look how beautiful your sister is. Look how smart she is. Look at her success. And then the glance at me, a polite smile, a half-hearted "and you? How are you?" Invisible, forgettable. That was me, but I had learned to live with it. At least I thought I had, until that night. Until she told me, like I was some unwanted guest, to eat my cake and leave. I walked home alone, clutching the strap of my empty purse, my footsteps echoing on the pavement. I replayed her words over and over. Each time, they stung more. I had given her son joy, and she had given me humiliation. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, a fire began to stir inside me. It wasn't just anger. It was something stronger, something colder. For years, I had swallowed her insults, her arrogance, her subtle cruelties. I had stayed silent, thinking silence was dignity. But that night, I realized silence was just surrender. She wanted me invisible. But I wasn't going to disappear. No. I was going to make her see me. I was going to make them all see me. And the way I would do it would be something she never saw coming. The next morning, I woke up with a heaviness in my chest. My phone buzzed with pictures from the party, relatives posting selfies, children holding balloons, my sister posing beside her son, smiling like the perfect mother. Not a single picture had me in it. It was almost as if I hadn't even been there. That hurt more than I expected. I scrolled past them, but the more I looked, the more I felt that bitter taste again. I thought back to when we were children, when it was always the same story, she in the spotlight, me in the shadows. I remember birthdays when I saved my allowance to buy her little trinkets. A bracelet, a book, even a scarf once. She would take them, smile for a moment, then toss them aside. But when her friends or our relatives gave her something, she'd beam with pride, wearing it for weeks. It was never about the gift. It was about who gave it. And when it was me, it was never enough. But you see, children notice these things. Even if you stay quiet, even if you pretend you don't care, those memories etch themselves into your bones. Over the years, they become layers. And eventually, they weigh you down. That's what I carried with me that night, the weight of years of being unseen. My parents didn't help either. They always compared us. She was the bright one, the ambitious one, the daughter they proudly showed off at weddings and family events. And me, I was the obedient one, the simple one, the one they never worried about because in their eyes, there was nothing to brag about. Dear, you know what that does to a person? To always feel like the background character in your own life story. And yet, despite everything, I had kept trying to please, trying to show I was worthy, trying to belong. That's why I had bought that expensive gift. Not just for my nephew, but to prove to myself maybe this time they'll see me. But humiliation was my reward. As I sat at the kitchen table sipping bitter coffee, I felt something shift inside me. My thoughts weren't the same anymore. This wasn't just about hurt feelings. This wasn't just about being embarrassed. No, this was about something bigger. For years, I had let her win. I had let her paint me as small, quiet, insignificant. But what if I didn't? What if I stopped playing the role she had written for me? The idea scared me. And yet, it thrilled me, because deep down, I knew things about her. Secrets. The kind of secrets that could make her perfect world crumble. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid to use them. That day, I couldn't focus on anything. Work emails went unanswered, the pile of laundry sat untouched, and even the TV felt like meaningless noise. My mind was stuck on one loop: my sister's words, her smirk, the way she dismissed me like I was some nuisance she had to endure. I kept asking myself, why her? Why does she always get to win? But then another thought struck me: she wins because I let her. She thrived on my silence, my stillness, my willingness to swallow humiliation just to keep the peace. She knew I wouldn't speak up, that I'd smile through clenched teeth and walk away. And because of that, she never feared me. But maybe it was time she did. I walked to the corner of my small apartment and opened the wooden chest where I kept old things: letters, photographs, scraps of memories I could never throw away. My fingers brushed across envelopes yellowed with age until I pulled out one that had been tucked far beneath the others. A letter. One I had found years ago in my parents' drawer. It wasn't addressed to me, but I had read it anyway. It was from a lawyer, about an inheritance, about property my parents once considered dividing between us. Only, they never told me. And from the way things had played out back then, I suspected, no, I knew my sister had something to do with it. She got the larger share, the better piece of land, the money that helped her start the life she flaunted today. And I was told there wasn't much left, that I should be content with what little they gave me. I pressed the letter against my chest and closed my eyes. Back then, I stayed quiet because I didn't want to tear the family apart. Because I thought maybe one day she'll see my kindness and repay it. But now I realized kindness had no place with people like her. My lips curled into the faintest smile. She thought she had buried me under years of humiliation. But she had forgotten one thing: buried things have a way of coming back. And if I played my cards right, her own secrets would be the rope she'd hang herself with. That night, as the city outside buzzed with life, I sat by the dim light of my lamp, thinking, planning. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I felt powerful. And though my hands trembled with both fear and excitement, one thought steadied me: she wanted me gone, invisible, forgotten. But I was about to make sure she'd never forget me again. The days that followed, I walked through life differently. Not louder, not bolder, no. That wasn't my style. but sharper, more observant. Every word, every glance, every whisper from my relatives suddenly mattered. It was like peeling back layers of a book I had been reading blindly for years. And slowly, I began to see what I had ignored all along. My sister's perfect life wasn't as flawless as she wanted everyone to believe. At the party, I remembered the way her husband barely spoke to her, his eyes fixed on his drink instead of her. The way she snapped at him under her breath when she thought no one was listening. The way her smile faltered every time someone asked about his business. It was small, almost invisible. But I noticed, and that was my first weapon, noticing what others ignored. One evening, I called my aunt. She was the kind of woman who lived off gossip like oxygen. She didn't need much to start spinning stories, just a spark, and she'd turn it into fire. So I gave her one. I sighed into the phone, my voice soft, concerned, almost innocent. Auntie, did you notice at the party? My sister didn't seem happy. I mean, I could be wrong, but her husband looked so distant. It made me worried. Silence on her end for a moment. Then, just as I expected, she leaned in. You noticed too. That was all it took. Within days, whispers began to spread in the family circle. Harmless at first, but steady. Did you see her face at the party? I wonder if something's wrong at home. Maybe her marriage isn't as perfect as she says. I never said much, just enough to fan the flame. And as the whispers grew, I watched my sister. At first, she seemed unfazed, still strutting around with her usual arrogance. But then little cracks began to show. A tightness in her smile, a sharper tone in her voice when people asked too many questions. I knew her well. She thrived on control, on presenting the perfect image. And nothing rattled her more than the thought of people doubting that image. For the first time in my life, I felt a shift in power. Small, almost invisible, but it was there. She had made me feel small with a slice of cake. Now, I was making her squirm with nothing but whispers, and this was only the beginning, because the letter still lay in my drawer, heavy with secrets of the past. And when the time was right, I would use it to tear her perfect world apart. Whispers are like smoke, silent, shapeless, but impossible to catch once they spread. And in our family, gossip moved faster than wildfire. Within a week, the questions about my sister's marriage had turned into rumors. No one said it directly to her face, of course. That's not how families like ours worked. Instead, it spread in kitchens, in WhatsApp groups, in late-night phone calls between relatives who claimed they hated drama but thrived on it, and me. I just listened, smiled when someone brought it up, shrugged when they asked what I thought. I never had to say much. Silence is a powerful tool. People fill in the blanks themselves, and often they paint a far darker picture than you ever could. One evening, I attended another family gathering. It was just a small dinner at my uncle's house, but I could feel it in the air the moment my sister walked in, eyes darting toward her, hushed tones that immediately fell silent as she passed. She noticed. I could tell by the way her chin lifted higher than usual, the way her smile was just a little too forced. At the dinner table, my aunt leaned toward her and asked, "So, how is your husband's business doing these days? I heard things are difficult." The room went quiet. My sister's fork froze mid-air, and then, with that same sharp tone she always used when cornered, she snapped, "Who told you that? His business is fine. Better than fine." But her voice betrayed her. It trembled. I lowered my gaze, pretending to focus on my food, but inside, I smiled. The seed had taken root. On the way home that night, I thought about the letter again. The inheritance. The truth that my sister had kept buried for years. A part of me wanted to pull it out immediately, to expose her lies in front of everyone and watch her crumble. But another part of me, colder, wiser, whispered, "Not yet. Revenge isn't about speed. It's about timing. If I struck too soon, she'd have time to recover, to rebuild her mask. But if I waited, let the doubts grow, let her paranoia eat at her, then when the truth finally came out, it would hit her like a storm she couldn't escape. So I waited. I watched, and slowly, surely, my sister began to unravel. It didn't take long before my sister came looking for me. One evening, my phone rang. Her name lit up the screen. For a moment, I just stared at it, letting it buzz in my hand. She rarely called me directly unless she needed something. I answered, keeping my voice calm. "Hello." Her tone was clipped, almost rehearsed. "Can we meet tomorrow at the CAF near Mom's house?" I hesitated, letting the silence drag just enough for her to sense my reluctance. "All right," I said finally. The next day, I arrived early. I sat by the window, watching the streetlights flicker on as the evening settled in. When she walked in, she looked perfect as always, hairstyled, designer handbag swinging at her side. But there was something different this time. Her eyes, they darted around, restless, searching. She sat down across from me, ordering nothing. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she leaned forward. "Have you been saying things?" I raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Her jaw tightened. "About me. About my husband. No one ever talked about me. I was invisible. Forgettable. But suddenly, they're all whispering about you. Must feel strange." Her lips parted in shock, then pressed into a thin line. "This isn't a game," she hissed. "You don't know what you're doing." But she was wrong. I knew exactly what I was doing. I smiled faintly. "I'm not doing anything. If people are talking, maybe it's because they're finally seeing what was always there." For the first time in years, I saw it, fear flashing across her face. She tried to mask it quickly, straightening her shoulders, but I caught it, and it fueled me. She grabbed her handbag and stood up. "Stay out of my life," she spat. "If you know what's good for you." But as she stormed out of the CF, heels clicking furiously against the floor, I sat there calm, steady, almost serene, because for once she was the one unraveling. And I was just getting started. After that CAF meeting, something inside me shifted. For years, I had walked away from her insults, her dominance, her sharp words that cut me down to size. But this time, when she left in anger, I didn't feel small. I felt powerful. The truth was, she wasn't as untouchable as she thought. And I had only brushed the surface. The next family gathering, my cousin's engagement, I decided to test just how fragile her mask really was. The house was buzzing with laughter, the air thick with the smell of biryani and roses. Everyone was dressed in their finest, snapping photos and sharing smiles. And in the middle of it all was my sister, holding her husband's arm, parading him like a trophy. But I noticed something no one else did, or maybe they were too polite to acknowledge it. His smile never quite reached his eyes. His body leaned away from her just slightly, like he couldn't wait for her grip to loosen. So when a group of relatives gathered around me, chatting about work and life, I slipped in a quiet remark, "You know, I really admire my sister," I said, voice soft, almost admiring. "It can't be easy keeping up appearances when things aren't perfect at home." I let the words hang in the air just long enough. Then I smiled, changed the subject, and pretended like nothing had happened, but I saw the flicker of curiosity in their eyes. The little shift in their wet first. Let her perfect little kingdom wobble before I set fire to its foundation, and as I slid the letter back into its place, a calm certainty settled in me. I wasn't the background character anymore. No, this was my story now, and she was about to learn that even the quietest shadows can swallow the brightest light. Weeks passed, but the tension only thickened. My sister's forced smiles grew tighter, her laughter sharper, her glances toward me filled with suspicion. It was intoxicating to watch years of being dismissed and ignored, and now finally, she was the one unsettled. I knew I had to move carefully. One wrong step, and she could rebuild her armor, dismiss my whispers, and make me the villain. So I picked my target carefully. My aunt. She was the matriarchal type who kept tabs on everyone's business, loved family gossip, and had enough influence to make stories spread like wildfire. I invited her over under the pretense of catching up and poured her tea with an almost innocent smile. You know, I began, choosing my words like a surgeon. I was going through some old family documents the other day, and I found something strange about the inheritance. The way it was divided, it almost didn't seem fair. Did you ever notice that? Her eyebrows shot up. What do you mean? I leaned back, letting my expression be just thoughtful enough to seem casual. Well, some things were hidden, some shares never mentioned, and it seems certain people benefited more than others. Her eyes widened. Are you talking about my niece? I let out a soft laugh, shaking my head. I'm just saying, things might not be as perfect as we thought. I mean, it's been years, but when you look closely, little cracks appear. By the time she left, my aunt's mind was racing. She would share it. She couldn't help herself. It wasn't malicious, at least, not initially, but it was the spark. Once the right people heard, it would spread. And it did. Within days, subtle questions began to reach me from cousins, uncles, even my parents. Did you notice? Have you seen? Is it true? And I didn't have to answer. I let the curiosity and doubt ferment. Meanwhile, my sister was unraveling faster than I could have imagined. She paced in her home at odd hours, checking her phone, counting who had said what, rereading messages she assumed no one had seen. Her perfect image, the one she had polished for years, was starting to crack, and every time I saw her, every time our eyes met across the family gatherings, I felt that same fire inside me. A quiet, controlled satisfaction. She had humiliated me with a slice of cake. Now, I was taking pieces of her pride, one whisper at a time, and the inheritance letter, the ultimate truth, was still waiting. Patience, I reminded myself. Patience was the weapon no one expected. The next family gathering was my cousin's wedding rehearsal dinner. A large hall, filled with relatives in sparkling attire, laughter bouncing off the walls, and the smell of incense and fried snacks in the air. My sister arrived, radiant as always, or at least, that's what she wanted everyone to believe. But I could see it. The slightest tremor in her hands as she adjusted her dress. The way she kept checking her husband's face, desperate for reassurance. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but I noticed. During the evening, I wandered near the dessert table, pretending to admire the cake display, and then, just casually, I said aloud, loud enough for those nearby to hear, "Funny how some things never change. Like how certain people always seem to benefit more than others. Even years later, it's clear who got the better share." A few heads turned. Murmurs started. My sister froze mid-step, a fork hovering in her hand. Her husband's jaw tightened. She looked around the room, searching for witnesses, but it was too late. People were already whispering, leaning toward each other, sharing curious glances. I smiled faintly, a whisper of satisfaction curling in my chest. I didn't say her name. I didn't have to. Everyone knew who I meant. By the time the first dance started, the damage had been done. I noticed subtle looks directed at my sister. Some were sympathetic, others skeptical. She tried to maintain her usual composure, laughing too loudly at jokes, offering tight smiles, but cracks showed. And I realized something. Humiliation works differently when it comes from within your family. It's not a stranger's insult. It's not a neighbor gossiping. It's the quiet power of truth bending the perception of everyone around you, and suddenly, the golden image you've spent a lifetime polishing starts to crumble. Later that night, as she sat with her husband, whispering furiously under the table, I passed by and caught her eye. For the first time in years, there was fear there. Not just anger but fear. And I let her feel it, because this was only the beginning. The inheritance letter was still tucked away, waiting. And when I revealed it, it wouldn't just shake her, it would shatter her. The letter sat in my drawer like a loaded gun, silent, patient, waiting for the right moment. For years it had been forgotten or perhaps deliberately ignored, but now it was time. I didn't rush. I never do. Revenge, I've learned, is an art. You don't throw the knife, you let the other stumble onto it. The perfect opportunity came during a quiet afternoon visit from my cousin, the one who had always admired me quietly, even when the family seemed to overlook me. As we sat in my apartment sipping tea, I casually mentioned the inheritance. You know, I began, voice light, conversational. I came across something interesting recently. A letter about the estate after Mom and Dad passed. Funny how some things were hidden, isn't it? Some shares not mentioned, and some people benefiting far more than others. Her eyes widened immediately. What do you mean? I let a faint smile play across my lips. I'm just saying, some truths have a way of slipping through the cracks, especially when people assume everything is perfect. She leaned closer, curiosity sharp in her gaze. Are you saying? I shrugged, pretending to be nonchalant. Just saying, it's interesting how family stories get rewritten over the years. Sometimes, people forget what really happened. That night, whispers had begun again, sharper, faster, more persistent. By the next morning, the news had traveled farther than I could have hoped. Relatives started asking subtle questions at family calls, in WhatsApp groups, and casual meetings. Did you know about the inheritance? I heard some things were uneven, and my sister, she was unraveling. Her calls to me became frantic, desperate. Why are you saying these things? She demanded one evening. Who have you told? I smiled softly, calm, controlled. I haven't said anything. People just notice, don't they? Her hands shook, a tremor I hadn't seen since we were children. She realized I didn't need to do anything directly. The knowledge alone, the subtle nudging of suspicion, was enough to make her crumble. She had humiliated me with a slice of cake. Now, I was the one holding the power. And the letter, the ultimate truth, was still waiting. I didn't need to reveal it yet. Not fully. Patience, timing, precision. The storm had begun, and my sister had no idea how fierce it was about to become. It was time. I had waited patiently, letting the whispers grow, letting her anxiety fester. Now, the moment had arrived to turn suspicion into undeniable truth. I invited my aunt and one of my cousins over, casually, for tea. Nothing special, just a quiet afternoon. And as we sat in my small living room, I reached into the drawer and pulled out the inheritance letter. I laid it on the table, smoothing the paper carefully, letting the weight of it command attention. I found this recently, I said softly. It's from the lawyer who handled Mom and Dad's estate. I think it explains a lot. Maybe more than we realized at the time. My aunt leaned in, her fingers tracing the edges of the paper. What is it? I smiled faintly, as if I were sharing a family curiosity rather than delivering a verdict. It shows how the inheritance was divided, and it seems one person received far more than they were entitled to. Their eyes widened. My cousin gasped quietly. I let the silence stretch, letting the reality sink in before I added, softly, and the rest. Well, they never knew the full story. By the next day, it had spread. Not rumors, not whispers, facts. The letter didn't lie, and neither did the evidence, and my sister. She was collapsing under the weight of her own lies. At every gathering, she looked over her shoulder, tense and defensive. Relatives who once admired her flawless image now whispered behind her back. People questioned her decisions, her wealth, her honesty. Her perfect mask was cracking little by little, public mistake by public mistake, and as I watched from the sidelines, I felt the satisfaction I had imagined for years. She had humiliated me with a slice of cake at my nephew's birthday party. Now, I was the one holding the power, but I didn't gloat. Not yet. True revenge isn't about noise. It's about watching the empire you built for yourself crumble, brick by brick, while you remain calm, collected, untouchable. And as I carefully returned the letter to its place, I knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. The family had seen her true face now, and soon everyone would know just how far her arrogance and deceit had reached. The fire had started, and nothing could stop it. The next family gathering was a turning point. It was my nephew's school award ceremony, small, formal, and full of parents, relatives, and friends. Everyone expected a cheerful celebration, with my sister at the center of attention, radiating perfection as usual. But I arrived early, calm, steady, confident, and I could already feel the change in the air. The moment my sister walked in, I noticed it immediately. She wasn't radiating control. Her smile was tight, rehearsed, forced. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her dress, and the way she kept scanning the room. Her eyes betrayed anxiety, paranoia, fear. Whispers had already spread about the inheritance letter. The family knew, and they were watching. Curious, skeptical, some even pitying. I moved through the room, offering smiles, light conversation, staying just out of reach of direct confrontation. And I watched. A relative approached my sister, hesitantly. We heard about the inheritance. It's quite unexpected, isn't it? Her mouth opened, closed, then formed words that sounded brittle, fragile. It's complicated. Another relative chimed in, quietly. We thought you were the one who always handled things carefully. We didn't expect this. Her eyes flickered toward me. And there was the realization. She knew I had orchestrated this. Perfectly, slowly, deliberately, while she was too blind to notice. By the end of the evening, her composure had cracked completely. She left early, her husband barely following, whispering urgently. The relatives left behind exchanged knowing glances, and I stayed behind, helping my nephew with his award certificate, smiling gently at him, feeling lighter than I had in years. because this was more than revenge. This was dignity reclaimed. No more hiding in shadows. No more swallowing humiliation. No more being invisible. My sister had humiliated me with a slice of cake, thinking she could erase me. Now, she had watched as her own secrets unfolded publicly. And I had watched quietly, steadily, waiting for the right moment. And as I tucked my nephew's certificate under my arm and left the hall, I felt a calm certainty wash over me. Revenge wasn't about hurting her. It was about finally choosing myself. And finally, she had no choice but to see me. The days after the school award ceremony were quiet, but not peaceful. My sister retreated into her world of perfect appearances, but the cracks were visible to everyone. At every family gathering, she tried to maintain her facade, but the whispers had already taken root. Relatives exchanged glances when she entered a room. Old friends who once admired her began questioning her choices, and I moved differently now. Confident, calm, present. I wasn't gloating, but I was no longer shrinking in the shadows. I smiled at relatives as they approached me. I laughed lightly at jokes, offered genuine attention to my nephew, and quietly observed the slow unraveling of the woman who once made me feel invisible. One afternoon, my aunt invited me over, tea in hand. "You've changed," she said softly. "It's different, seeing you so strong." I sipped my tea, letting the warmth settle in my chest. "I had to," I replied. "For too long, I let myself be invisible. For too long, I let her define me. But now, I choose me." Word spread quickly. Relatives who once overlooked me began seeking my advice, asking for my opinion, even including me in plans and decisions. I had quietly shifted from the background to the center, not by force, not by confrontation, but by patience, observation, and strategy. My sister, meanwhile, was cornered. Her attempts to regain control only drew attention to the cracks in her perfect life. Every word she said was scrutinized, every gesture analyzed. She had built her world on appearances, and now the truth, the inheritance letter, the whispers, the subtle manipulations had exposed the instability beneath. I didn't rub it in. I let the natural course of events speak for me. And it worked. For the first time in years, I felt a freedom I had never known. I wasn't just part of the family, I was a presence they noticed, a voice they respected. And my nephew, the reason I had begun this journey of quiet revenge, hugged me freely, untainted by the past. She had humiliated me with a slice of cake. I had returned with dignity, patience, and quiet strategy, and in the end, I had won, because true power isn't in yelling, shouting, or proving someone wrong. It's in choosing yourself, in watching silently, and letting the world catch up. It all came to a head during the next big family event, my nephew's first school performance. A small stage, bright lights, and an audience of relatives eager to see the children shine. My sister arrived, hair perfectly styled, designer bag in hand, as always. But I noticed it immediately. Her movements were sharp, her laughter forced, her eyes scanning the crowd as if she expected judgment at every corner. And judgment had arrived. Relatives whispered, subtle glances flicked toward her. The inheritance letter had changed the family dynamic permanently. Those who had once admired her now questioned her judgment, her honesty, her character. And I watched, quietly, observing the unraveling I had orchestrated with patience and precision. During the intermission, my sister approached me, her voice tight, almost strangled with suppressed anger. "You've crossed the line," she hissed. I smiled gently, meeting her eyes without flinching. "No," I said softly. I finally stood up for myself. You humiliated me at my nephew's birthday. I chose to respond with dignity, patience, and truth. As my nephew performed on stage, I held his hand tightly, whispering words of encouragement. He looked up at me with that innocent, trusting smile, and I realized that this connection, this respect, this presence was more important than any victory over my sister. The family's dynamics had shifted. Relatives approached me, shared quiet conversations, sought my opinion on matters large and small. I was no longer the background character. I was respected, acknowledged, and, most importantly, unafraid. And my sister, she had lost more than a game of pride. She had lost the illusion of perfection, the untouchable status she had relied on for years. I had begun this journey because of humiliation, because of a slice of cake. But I ended it with something far more valuable: dignity, patience, and self-empowerment. And as I tucked my nephew into bed that night, his small hand in mine, I whispered quietly to myself, she wanted to make me invisible, but I chose to shine. As the night ended, I sat quietly, reflecting on everything that had happened. A slice of cake, a single moment of humiliation, had once made me feel invisible. But now, I had found my voice, my power, my place in the family. This story isn't just about revenge. It's about patience, strategy, and reclaiming dignity in the face of those who try to diminish you. It's about standing tall, even when the world seems to forget you exist. Sometimes, the strongest revenge isn't shouting or confrontation, it's calm, measured, and deliberate. It's showing up, being seen, and letting the truth speak for itself. And most importantly, it's about choosing yourself. If you've ever felt unseen or underestimated by family or those close to you, remember this: your voice matters, your presence matters, and your patience can turn the tide in ways no one expects. Thank you for following this story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more gripping family drama stories. And comment below: have you ever stood up for yourself in a moment you thought you were invisible? I'd love to hear your story, because sometimes the quiet ones are the ones who change everything.